today. Uh, Thank you, Don. So let me go ahead and actually stop the share on this particular slideshow. Give me just a moment, folks. And let me stop the share on that for just a moment. Sorry, we're just organizing some things here. Let me go ahead and try sharing that out again. All right, there we go. Okay, thank you so much, folks, for coming again this afternoon. And so let's go ahead and get this show on the road. For those of you who maybe missed the pre-show slides, just some quick reminders and housekeeping. Uh, Normally, I like to take questions in context during the course of a webinar, but because we have a lot of ground to cover today, and I want to make sure that everybody's questions hopefully get answered, we're going to ask you to hold your questions until the end. And again, hopefully we'll try to get to everyone's before we run out of time. Secondly, those today, and I encourage you to sign up for an open slot in one of January's accessibility office hour sessions. If you registered for this, you will get a link to the recording either later today or early tomorrow. So don't worry about being able to capture everything today. Also, there will be a URL code at the very end of the session that you will be able to use to get to everything. So all of the URLs that I'm sharing with you today, you will be able to get from that QR code. Having said all that, let's move on. So, some disclaimers that I have to do every time that I talk about web accessibility, particularly when I'm doing a session like this, which really is just the beginning. And it's important to understand that you cannot potentially or possibly learn everything you need to know to make all of your library's digital assets accessible in the hour and a half that we have today. This is quite literally the tip of the iceberg. It takes many, many hours, days, and weeks to learn everything you need to know. I'm sorry, that's just the way that is. So, really, what we're doing here is hopefully giving you a launch pad for understanding some of the fundamentals that you may need to do that. The other disclaimer that I have to give is this acronym. If you're not familiar with this, if you've never seen it, it is an internet acronym, IANAL, which stands for I am not a lawyer. And I put this out there because first of all, you probably all knew already I'm not a lawyer. But more importantly, it has been my experience that when I am talking about web accessibility, particularly because it does involve legalities, that sometimes I get very specific questions. And again, I am not a lawyer. So my expertise goes to a point. You have to understand that web accessibility is a technical specialty. It's not a legal specialty, and there are lots of legal questions that can arise, in which case you need to consult your library's legal counsel or potentially ask OLC. But that's, again, if you have something very specific that's legally oriented, I may not be able to address that for you today. So here's what we are going to talk about today. We're going to start with who is all of this really geared to? Because again, my experience has been, and I've been talking about web accessibility across the US now for library organizations for easily a decade, probably more, is that sometimes folks don't always understand exactly who this is geared for. And then the piece that probably a lot of you want to know about, which is understanding your responsibilities as a library. I'm going to show you some concrete things that you can do right now to start yourself getting some things remediated. I've got a special section specifically for PDFs because PDFs are kind of a special animal and with a lot of special circumstances. And then some final notes with some tools, the magic QR code, and then we'll get to the question section at the end. So, starting with who is web accessibility really for? So, it's for a lot more people than you probably think. Now, again, my experience talking about this with libraries and library organizations over the past decade plus is that the immediate scenario that comes to mind is someone who is blind using a screen reader. And that's actually a very limiting way to think about web accessibility or accessibility in general. Um, in the US, at least 70 million adults identify as being someone with a disability. And that means that at least 1 in 4 have a disability, if you want to work out the math. And again, this is not necessarily always a disability that will affect how they access the internet, but these are people with disabilities. And a lot of these times, people with these kinds of disabilities sometimes do need specific accommodations to use the internet. And what's interesting about these numbers is that, first of all, that 1 in 4 or the 70 million is only self-reported. So that means there are people who do not report. On top of that, that's only adults. This has nothing to do with anyone under the age of 18. So given those two additional criteria that really aren't included, that number is probably significantly higher. Um, so the chances are that you absolutely have people with disabilities in your service area. And yes, you probably have people using assistive technology who are in your service area. So again, not just the blind, and it can get very easy when you start digging into fixes, for example, for web accessibility problems, to think that the only people that we have to address are people who are blind or maybe have low vision or other kinds of visual disabilities. In fact, there are 5 other categories of people with disabilities. You can see there, and these are defined by the WAI, the Web Accessibility Initiative, which is a very large international body that deals with web accessibility. So you can see people with auditory, cognitive, neurological, physical, speech is categorized separately, even though it might fit into some other categories, and of course, visual, which is the one that usually comes to mind right away. So lots of people have disabilities. And again, not all of these necessarily affect how they access the internet or may only access their or only limit their access in very specific ways. And that's okay. But it's important that we broaden our perspective to understand this is not just about people with screen readers. And if you start digging into web accessibility, it quickly becomes apparent that there are all kinds of fixes that are not geared specifically just for people who are blind using a screen reader, or maybe if they're deafblind using a refreshable braille display. That's another thing. There's all kinds of assistive technology out there that's not a screen reader. That's simply just the easiest and perhaps the most common, although I don't have data to back that up. So again, lots of people, they're in our communities, and web accessibility is really important because, of course, we're libraries. Our job is to get information to people. We don't want to, even unintentionally, disenfranchise anyone. So this is important for us to be doing. So however, as nice as that is to think we're libraries, we want to do everything we can to support these people and help them get what they need because libraries try to serve everyone, especially public libraries. There is a legal facet to this. And for many of you, that may be why you're here today. So let's talk about that a little bit and understanding your responsibilities as a library. So the first thing we have to sort of ground ourselves in is the fact that the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, has always covered web accessibility. This might blow your mind, but it has. And the Department of Justice has historically said year after year, the ADA covers web accessibility, which means that if your website hasn't been accessible, for example, you're already not in compliance with the ADA. And you might think, but wait, there was something new last year, wasn't there? Like, isn't there deadlines? And what's going on? Wait, we've always been in non-compliance? The answer to that question is probably yes. But what happened that made everything change and all of a sudden you're here today, perhaps a little concerned or even in panic mode? So let's talk about the April 2024 Department of Justice ruling, because when this came out, and I can tell you that probably for the past year and a half now, maybe a little less, I have gotten more calls from libraries in the US than I have probably in the past decade, because they are suddenly feeling cornered about this and they don't know what to do, understandably so, and they want to know what has to happen from this point, or they have specific questions about technical issues that I might be able to assist with. So this came out, as you can see there, April 2024, and unfortunately, some folks only just now are hearing about it. Although it was fairly well publicized by both Oakland and OLC, but so you might be a little bit behind the eight ball here. So what is this? First of all, this is just, it does two things, really. Not even first of all, just it just does two things. And so remember, back up a little bit, the ADA applies to web accessibility. And by the way, web accessibility is not just your website. It's anything you can access on the internet. That doesn't necessarily mean just a website. And in fact, you can see here at the top of the screenshot that this is the fact sheet new rule on the accessibility of web content and mobile apps. So if you have a mobile app for your library, this also applies along with anything else that basically you access via the internet. Um, but this did two really important things, and why was the source of why I was getting so many phone calls. The first one is that it finally did something that accessibility advocates have been wanting to happen for a while. So even though the ADA technically covers web accessibility, all the Department of Justice had been saying for years was, hey, your stuff has to be accessible, and never really saying what that meant. There were no criteria by which you could truly measure whether or not something was accessible. So, what was happening, and you probably heard about this in various ways on the news, is that stuff would end up in the courts, right? Because when there's no real law or anything solid, stuff goes to court and the court decides. And that's what was happening. And so, what the Department of Justice did in this ruling is they said, okay, the criteria you have to use, and we'll talk about these in just another slide or two, is going to be the World Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 AA. That will mean a little more to you in just a minute. The important thing about this was not just that it said, hey, here's actually the set of criteria you have to use. That's actually the same set of criteria that the vast majority of court cases were using. So they basically said the courts are right, use this one. And it's been widely adopted. It's an international standard. It's not just specific to the US. So that was great. Very happy about that. The other thing that it did, and why many of you might be kind of panicking, is because it also set a deadline on it. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. There we go. So here it is. Or sometimes people will call it WCAG or WCAG, the World Content Accessibility Guidelines. And this is a long list of technical criteria that web content and web applications have to meet in order to be considered accessible. What's interesting about this, well, a couple things. First, you'll notice it says 2.1. The current standard is actually 2.2, but because the courts have been saying 2.1 for a while, I suspect that's why they said 2.1. So it's actually being a little lenient. There are even more criteria in 2.2. No doubt at some point in the future, they're going to say, okay, time to up it. We're going to level up now to 2.2, but we're not there yet. The other part of that says double A. I always think of this kind of like eggs. There's a level A, a level double A, a level triple A. And A is so basic that it's almost not worth talking about. It's really not even the bare minimum in most cases. It's a very small list of criteria that's almost meaningless. But to meet double A, you have to meet all of the single A, the A standards. Double A is in the middle, And then I mentioned AAA. And AAA, it sounds really good, like, oh, we want everything to be at level AAA. But even the courts have not required that. The DOJ is not going to require that. And a large part of that is because AAA compliance would be fantastic, but in many cases, it's not even achievable from a technical perspective. That will come, but we're not there yet. So here we are in the middle on level AA. And really important to understand that this is a technical standard, which is why I'm getting the phone calls because that's what I do. This is what's behind the scenes of your app, behind the scenes of your web stuff. This is not looking at stuff the way that you, as probably a standardly equipped person, look at it. It's actually all these assistive tech devices are looking at the code behind the scenes to determine if something is accessible or not. So I mentioned deadlines, and this is where people start getting very nervous because there are two sets of deadlines, and it depends on your census population. Remember, this is a federal standard, not a state standard. So your service area is determined by Ohio. That doesn't matter here. This is your actual census population that you serve. If your library serves 50,000 or more people, your deadline's coming up real fast, and you're going to be prioritizing this probably over everything else for the next several months. And that is April 24th, 2026. For many libraries in Ohio, they have more time. If you're under 50,000, which is probably the majority of libraries in Ohio, you have until April 26, 2027, which probably gives you a little bit of some breathing room for sure. But again, another thing to ruin your day, remember that the ADA still covers web accessibility, which means that if you're not in compliance now, that doesn't mean somebody can't file a complaint with the Civil Rights Division. That doesn't mean that someone can't say something about it. It means that if somebody complains about it, you're still going to have to fix it, which is why here at Oakland, we've basically been treating all our web clients as if that deadline is April next year. We understand that they want to get comfortable with 2027, but again, there's no protection for you. It's just probably, again, I am not a lawyer, but my guess is that it will be not, less friendly if you have a problem after your deadline, if there is one. So let's talk about what you actually have to fix and who has to fix it. So, the first thing, let's talk about websites because when we say the word web accessibility, of course, that's probably what everybody thinks of. And again, remember, it's not just your website. If you have anything online, you're pretty much, you've got to remediate it. So the first big part for most libraries is going to be their website or their content management system. Who fixes that and make sure it's appropriately accessible really varies. So, for example, here at Oakland, we use Drupal, which has a huge it's open source. It has a massive developer community across the globe, and the thing that made us really stick with Drupal is that Drupal has it at its core. Now, I don't get paid by Drupal. Again, it's an open source software. There's nobody out here poking me saying, Laura, talk nice things about Drupal. But it is really nice in that they prioritize that. Unfortunately, that is not the case for most other large scale content management systems. And I'm not, no hate to WordPress because lots of people use it, but there are issues. And that's not to say there are no issues with Drupal. There are things that we do have to remediate as well. But that can also, the whole thing, regardless of what brand you're using, whether it's home built or you're using something with a developer community that's open source, whatever it is, someone built it for you, is that sometimes there are different pieces and parts that different organizations or different developers create. So who fixes that? Who's responsible for it? In the end, it's probably going to be your library. It's particularly if it's open source, you're going to have somebody fix it. If you're getting it from a vendor, then they would fix it. There's not a real easy, simple answer here because, again, a lot of these systems come in parts. Different people, different orgs do different things. The next level is the design or the theme. So let's say that you're using some kind of system that's inherently accessible under the hood, but then you put a theme or a design on top of that and it's not accessible. Maybe it has issues. That also has to be remediated. And who does that? Again, that's going to depend on who created it. So if this was a vendor who created it for you, they're going to be responsible. If you created it in-house, this would be a good time to maybe not. It's again pieces and parts. You have to decide or figure out who's responsible. This is the only piece that I can generally say reliably every library is responsible for, and that is the content, not the website mechanics, not the design of the website, but the content that actually goes into the website is usually something that has to be remediated by the library. And some of the fixes I'm going to show you today are specifically in that tier because those are the things I know libraries generally have control over. You generally have control over things like the text you put into your website, um, maybe even things like navigation, and again, that you have to start piecing apart, like, is that part of the design or the theme or is that content? It's always going to be on a case by case basis. And then the last thing that I will typically see when we talk about websites, especially, are third party widgets, whether it's a rotating book carousel or some kind of social media widget. The responsibility for those is on the part of the provider. So let's say you have some kind of widget from a social media platform, and it turns out it's not so great at the basics of being accessible, which you have to meet. Who fixes that? Well, let's just, for the sake of example, say that it's a Facebook widget. Well, Facebook, in theory, would be responsible for fixing that. The chances, though, of you getting Facebook to fix anything, as you're probably all laughing now, I can't hear you, is pretty low. So what that probably will mean in the end is that you won't be able to use it. So all of that is to say is that this stuff needs to be seriously tested before you plunk it on your websites. I know there's all kinds of cool widgets from all kinds of vendors and providers doing all kinds of things, but they generally only get on your website if you give the okay. So you need to be very, very careful here. And your apps, you cannot forget your apps, which is a whole nother animal that has to be taken care of. Now, some of you may be familiar with these kinds of things. If you've ever seen that little symbol you see in the upper right there of the human figure with the arms stretched out, and it's just very generic looking, and it's usually in a circle, something like this, that usually indicates that there has been an overlay widget uh, installed to the website. At Oakland, we don't allow these at all. And there's lots of good reasons for that. So let me talk about that. These kinds of things are not great. Let me give you one of the best things that I've seen all year. So I had the privilege of attending DrupalCon in Atlanta this spring, and there was actually a librarian there who was also a front end developer, much like myself, but she worked for the university libraries at the University of Albany, and that was very interesting to me because the fact there was a librarian speaking at DrupalCon, which is a hardcore tech conference, was really great. I was not expecting that, but what made it particularly interesting is that she herself has disabilities that affect how she uses online resources. And keep in mind, the room was full of people who specialize in web accessibility, and we were talking specifically about things you can use with Drupal. And she said this: so when you see that universal access symbol down there, it doesn't mean what universal access really means. It means that the owner of that website probably got duped. The whole room burst into laughter and applause because she said what we were all thinking. These companies promise a lot. They cannot solve your problems because they don't fix the problems at the core. It's basically a band-aid. They make a lot of promises that they can't necessarily keep. And so if you have one of these, please understand, first of all, it can't protect you legally from anything. Secondly, these can actually be a real problem to people who are using assistive technology. In fact, Will Reed, the director for the Library of the Blind and the Print Disabled at Cleveland Public Library, has told me that specifically, and I also bring the receipts. So if you want to screenshot this, you can. Again, the URLs will also all be encompassed by that QR code at the end of the session. But there's lots of things about why these are not great. The accessibility community and people using assistive tech want the problem solved at the core, at the foundation. They don't want a band-aid. They don't want tech that can actually interfere with the tech they're already using. There's lots of reasons. Um, Feel free to peruse any of these and understand that this is a bill of goods that is typically sold not just to libraries, but to many other organizations, that doesn't actually solve the problem and can, in fact, make you think you solved the problem and you haven't. So if you have one of these, I know that probably all these companies have hired hitmen at this point for me, but nonetheless, if you have one, this would be a good time to not renew it. That's all I'm going to say about that. So let's talk about fixes that you can actually do right now. So these are going to be the concrete takeaways that you can do once you leave today, or heck, if you want to ignore me, you can do them while I'm talking. Things that are common problems on websites for libraries and things you may not understand why they're problems or how to fix them. So let's start with content headers. So what do I mean by that? Let's take a look at this area over to the white where the red circles are. You can see there's a top level header there at the that says sample page, and then there's kind of two subheaders maybe below that, topic one and topic two. The text, again, just placeholder text, doesn't mean anything. When you look at these, because I'm assuming today, maybe wrongfully so, but that you do not have a visual disability, you can generally look at this and see, oh, the text at the top is maybe a little bit bigger, but it's definitely bold and there's white space around it. And I see the same thing happening with topic one and topic two. So those are headers. Those are all visual cues. The fact that there's white space, the fact that they're bigger, that they're bolder. You have to be able to see at least somewhat in order to absorb that as information that could help you navigate the page. If you're using, let's use the easy example of a screen reader, you can't do that. You're not going to be able to gain that context simply by looking at it. And this is where you have to remember, oh, right, okay, WCAG, the criteria that looks at the code behind the scenes. There's no code here, right? So let's take a look at what this would actually look like. And for those of you who are like, oh no, HTML, take a deep breath. It's just a little bit, I promise today, not too much. And if you haven't seen HTML since maybe grad school, it's perfectly okay. I will try not to be too scary. But let's look over to the right, and you can see there's that top level header, sample page, it's in yellow, and then the subheader is topic one, topic two in blue. What does that look like under the hood, so to speak? What does this look like or need to look like for a screen reader? If you look over to the left, you can see that the sample page, the top level header, now is surrounded by H1 tags. In HTML, headers go from level 1 or H1 to all the way down to header 6, so or H6. And so you can see if it's actually properly marked up behind the scenes in the code, this is what it would look like. It's not that scary looking. It's important to know though, with using these, it's been a while, you can't skip them. So for example, let's say that we had a topic 2.1, we could mark that up as another H2 or another we could put it as an H3 under that H2, but we couldn't go straight from H2 to H4, for example. You can't skip any. The reason you can't do that, and the reason that this has to happen at all, is because people using a lot of kinds of assistive technology think of it as like a bridge, right? And they're going or a landmark, a list of landmarks, or even a table of content. When you have all these headers, people using assistive tech can access a list of these and navigate from place to place in the page. If you miss one, so let's say you went straight from H2 to H4, then you would have a missing plank in that bridge and people would not be able to navigate properly. Think of it like Indiana Jones. It's a bridge and half the planks are missing. You can't get anywhere, not easily. So it's important to make sure that our headers are marked up in a way that people can understand. So that's very basic HTML stuff. And I will be including some other HTML things, but again, not scary. And if you're already looking at this going, oh no, I can't do this. Hopefully you have a tech person at your library or someone who remembers a little HTML, but hopefully not too difficult. One thing I see still a lot of has to do with tables. So let me preface this with I have been doing web work in libraries professionally since the late 90s. I'm old, folks. I have seen the beginning of the graphic internet, and I'm still here to tell the tale. Maybe some of you are as well. And you may remember in the very early days that using tables to design pages was a thing. It was the norm. It was the norm for a long time. But it's not anymore, and it's really important that you don't do it. Let's talk about it. Tables are not for design. Yes, I'm screaming at you. There you go. Don't do this. The things I'm about to show you, don't do this. Tables are only for tabular data. The rule of thumb that I give to people is that if you would not put whatever it is you're about to put into your website into an actual Excel spreadsheet, it doesn't belong in a table. End of story. Tables are designed for tabular data. What does that look like? Here is not tabular data. This is what I will typically see is that people will use tables as a way to line up graphics with some text. That's a very common misuse of tables. Unfortunately, what's happened here though is that you have created something completely inaccessible when you do this. Once cascading style sheets happened in the early 2000s, table for design went away at the professional level. I'm not saying you need to go learn CSS, but understand that's not what tables do. This is not what they're for. So what is tabular data? Remember, it's anything that you would put into an Excel spreadsheet. So here we have something you could. It's very simple, but you could probably easily envision yourself putting this into a spreadsheet. We have fruit as a column on the left-hand side. We have vegetables on the right, and very simple, but notice we have column headers, which also help people with disabilities using assistive technology navigate through this. Because if we took away these headers, fruit and vegetables, and simply left bananas, apples, celery, lettuce, you looking at it probably could get the gist of what's supposed to be happening there. But again, someone without assistive technology doesn't have guideposts and they can't see the whole thing at a time. They literally have to navigate to each individual cell and then somehow guess from the context that this can happen. That this is what it is. Sorry. So don't use these for layout. And while we're at it, this is the scariest HTML stuff I'll give you today. So if this doesn't bother you, you're good. But if you haven't looked at HTML for a very long time, a lot of people back in the day in library school learned HTML 4.1. HTML has been on 5 for quite a long time. I'm not sure what that timeline is. A long time. And how tables are marked up in order to be accessible has changed. So you can see here on the right, we have a summary now that's an attribute of the table tag. There's now this thing called, whoops, need to go back. Apologies here, I got too excited pointing at things. We have a T body tag, we have table header tags, so those are new. So this old way of doing it where you simply had a table tag, you simply had a table row, a table data cell, we're past that now. So understand that just because you're not using pictures, it still has to be marked up properly. Hopefully if you're doing or using some kind of content management system, it's taking care of this for you. But again, I can't guarantee that for you. It's something you're going to have to check. Let's take a look at link issues. And what I mean by links, like literally links, links that people can click on. There's lots of things that can happen here. This is a really easy fix, is to remove raw URLs. So you can see here on the right-hand side with the red no symbol, we have a fully spelled out URL. We have https://ohioweblibrary.org. We don't want to see that. We want to hide that. Instead, we should simply see Ohio Web Library as the link. We shouldn't actually see raw URL text. I'm going to show you a quick demo in a minute about why this is a problem, so hold on to that thought. Anyone who has ever heard me talk about web stuff, probably ever, has heard me rant and rave and get up on a soapbox about the words click here. If you haven't, welcome. Here it goes again. Click here is absolutely awful, not just for web accessibility, but also for usability. First of all, let's start very basic. It's ableist because it assumes that people are clicking, okay? Which many people are not. In fact, with the advent of touch devices, we're touching really, although we still say click, and I understand that. But the problem with the words click here is that it is a problem, especially when it's surrounded by other text or no text at all. One of the criteria in WCAG is that you have to be able to tell what a link does simply from the link. So if there's surrounding text that says register for a program, and then right after that is the link, click here, that's not enough. Because the way that many people scan, whether they have a disability or not, is they're just looking for the things that stand out, and that includes links. And so the only thing their eye, if you're seeing person, is going to see, probably they're not going to read all the text. We already know nobody reads anything. How many times have you been asked for the bathroom just in your physical building? They're not reading the text that comes before click here. You need to have other text with as part of the link that makes it make sense. And it's the same thing for people who can see, who can't see. It doesn't matter. So what's better? Well, here's that awful text that makes me want to cry, which is simply click here. So you would think, okay, Laura, well, I will make it better and say, click here for more bestsellers. Is that better? That will technically meet the WCAG standard, but it will still be annoying and still make me kind of want to drink. Um, let's get rid of the words click here entirely. This. What is the point of the link? I don't need to be told what to do. I understand this is a link. Once in a great while, I still get people who tell me, but we have people who come into the library and they don't know how to use a mouse, and we're teaching them how to use the internet. I totally understand that. I totally support that. Keep doing it. However, we have to recognize that 30 years on, these people are the outliers. We're really not teaching people how to click a link anymore. And that's really where the origin of the phrase click here comes from, is from the very early days of the web when people, remember, I've been doing this a long time, maybe some of you have also, people literally did not know what a hyperlink was. We're long past those days. Just tell people what they're going to get. It will be okay, I promise. So ditch click here, just tell people what the point of the link is. All right, so here's that video. It's very short, and it's going to show you what it is like with a screen reader to experience links that simply say click here or that have raw URL text. And you're going to very quickly understand, I think, why these are such a problem for people with disabilities.
Click here, link. Chrome has new window. Click here, link. Click here, link. https://www.york.ac.uk/admin/estates/transport/public_transport/bus/index.html. Link. Chrome has new window. Visit our university webpage. Link. Send us your feedback. Link. Find out more about our courses. Link. How to get to us. Link.
Let me know in the chat. Was that a revelation? Were you surprised? Were you quickly annoyed?
Click here, link.
What did you think about that? Did that make sense? Why click here is a problem when that's the only link text? And Nathan says that's pretty bad, right? Usually when I show this to people, if I do it in person, I can watch people physically cringe when they're listening to this. And just seeing this once is usually enough to cure people of using the phrase click here, and especially not to use raw URL text because nobody wants that stuff read to you. Think about every URL you've ever seen. And John says the audio takes forever to complete. Yeah, and they're not going to wait. People with disabilities have the same kind of attention. They absolutely need to. They're out of there, just like we all are. It's like, ah, that takes too long. I'm gone. They're the same way.
Chrome has new window.
No, no, no.
Click.
Stop that. Okay. All right. So those are easy fixes, right? You can change the text of your links to be much friendlier for everybody, really. Let's talk about all caps and how this is another easy fix you can do with your content that will help people with disabilities. So you all already, I'm sure, know that using capital letters or all caps on the web has long meant you're yelling at someone, which is why when I said tables are not for design, I did that on purpose. That's all caps because I'm yelling. However, as much as we might want to yell at our patrons, we really can't. So mostly I don't see this quite the same way that I used to anymore because that message thankfully got out fairly quickly in the world. But there's still some things happening where I see it and where it becomes a problem. And typically I'll see that for like headers, navigation, all caps. And these become issues. And here's why. They're harder to read, generally speaking. Uh, so number one right there is kind of the foundation a lot of the other problems rest on, which is reduced shape recognition. Because when you have something that is in all caps, all the letters are the same height. Generally, they're the same width. The line spacing is the same. And it gets harder to differentiate, especially for people with low vision, what letter is different when even when they're right next to each other. So that's a problem. And then what that does is it then leads to things like increased visual strain, slower reading speed, line spacing issues. Not good. So as much as we might want to use all caps to maybe differentiate things, um, it's not a great way to manage it. Another kind of problem that happens has to do specifically with screen reader problems. So you just saw a screen reader in action or heard a screen reader in action. Uh, with URLs, right? And with links. But screen readers, how they address all caps can also be problematic. And remember, there are lots of different screen readers in the world. And then on top of that, people can make all kinds of custom adjustments to the way they like their screen reader to work. So, these are very broad general strokes. But one of the things that can happen with a screen reader is that it doesn't understand that this is simply a header. So let's say you have a header and it's like bestseller list. And if it doesn't, especially with older screen readers, it may not understand what that is, especially if it's not marked up. And it will start reading it letter by letter, which means it can also misinterpret abbreviations. So these are problems that happen for the person using the assistive technology and things we want to avoid. So when do you use all caps? There's really only one. This is easy. Actual abbreviations. If you're using them anywhere else, it's time for them to go bye-bye. Because they are a problem for someone. Maybe not for you, maybe not for everyone using a screen reader or other kinds of assistive tech, but somebody out there is having trouble with them, guaranteed. So if you're using them for headers or navigation or for emphasis in a sentence, again, the most common types of scenarios that I will usually see on library websites, time to retire that as a practice. If it's not an abbreviation, it really shouldn't be in all caps. What about alternative text? For those of you who aren't familiar with alternative text, let's talk about what it is, and then we'll talk about why writing good alternative text matters. So here we have a picture of a bottle with the pills spilling out. And again, just a little bit of HTML, but you can see up here at the top, we have an image uh, element or tag in HTML. So IMG means it's just telling the browser this is an image. And then CRC is the source. So where this image lives on the server. So at images / pill underscore bottle.jpg. The problem is that when a screen reader encounters a picture without alternative text, there's literally nothing for that person using assistive technology except the name of the file. So what they're going to get is pill underscore bottle.jpg. That's what's going to get read to them. And in most cases, it will actually be something like pill underscore bottle.jpg image or something like that. Again, depends on the screen reader. So this is not very informative, especially if something else is going on in the photo. This is not just a photo of a bottle of pills. It's a bottle of pills that's spilling out. So there's an action happening here that's not accessible, that or context that's not accessible. So what do? We add the alternative text. So here you can see almost the same thing, the image, the source, where it lives, but now we've added in an attribute here inside the image tag called alt, which is simply short for alternative text. And that is open bottle with pills spilling out. So we have now described what is happening in this photo. A little, and you can get a little more elaborate if you want, but not too elaborate. We'll talk about that because that's part of writing good alternative text. But if there's nothing there, if there's no alternative text, that page will immediately fail WCAG. It's one of the most common failures out there is for images not to have alternative text. So, but just having it isn't enough. And this is sometimes something that people struggle with because if you decide to use, say, an automated checker of any kind, and you have alternative text, and the automated checker is going to be like, thumbs up, you win, you got it, good job, you have alternative text. It doesn't matter what checker it is. Checkers cannot decide on the quality. They cannot determine quality. They can only determine whether or not that alt attribute inside the image tag exists or not. That's all they can do. So just having the actual alternative text will pass a checker, but it won't actually make that thing accessible to people. So let's start with this example here. This is a panda looking pretty chill on a rock. Okay. So here's a simple example that will pass a checker. Not so great. So here we have an image, and this is where the panda lives, figuratively speaking, on the server, the image of the panda lives. And then the alt is simply panda. Would that pass a checker? 100%. Will it tell someone using assistive technology what's happening or what the panda is doing? No. So pleasing checkers and actually making something accessible are not always the same thing. And alt text is one place where that becomes increasingly apparent pretty quickly. So here's one with a better alternative tag. Panda bear relaxing on a large rock. And you could if you wanted to go in a little more detail and say panda bear with front arms, not arms, legs crossed on a large rock. You get where I'm going, hopefully. Is the idea is we're saying more than simply identifying the object. We are giving some context to what is happening in the image. Now, some other notes about alternative text that are important to remember. All text has to describe the image. So if you saw that with the panda, right? Just having panda really isn't enough. It'll get you by the checker and that's it. It will not tell people what they actually need to know. So tell people what they need to know. You also don't want to say things like image of panda relaxing on a large rock or photo of a panda relaxing on a large rock. You do not need to say photo of, graphic of, image of, any of these things. The screen reader or assistive technology generally will take care of that. It will say something like panda relaxing on a large rock, and then a brief pause, and then image. So that gets taken care of on the assistive tech end. So when you add it to yours and you say image of a panda relaxing on a large rock, then the person with a screen reader would hear image of a panda relaxing on a large rock image. It's redundant, it's unnecessary, and remember, their attention spans are just like everybody else's. We don't need it, so get rid of it. You also want to keep it succinct, meaning that some screen readers will actually cut off the alternative text at about 125 characters. So while you might think you're doing someone a favor writing a small essay about what is happening in that image, don't. If it's an image that requires that much description, you need something very different called a long description, which I will not be covering today. That's for things often like charts or very or complicated flyers. So keep it short. But what if you have an image that is decorative? And how do you know if it's decorative? An image is decorative when it doesn't add any additional information about the content that isn't already in the text. So let's say that this is a beautiful mural, and let's say I'm using it as a header image for an art program. It doesn't actually tell you anything about the art program. It's purely decorative. So in that case, we still have to have that alt attribute, even though it's not really doing any work. It's simply there to jazz it up. There's no information. In that case, we're going to have an empty alt attribute. And that tells the browser and the assistive technology that this is a decorative image and it doesn't have to read anything about it or say anything about it. It's just there for decoration. You still have to have the alt attribute there, alt equals, but they're empty quotes. There's no text in there. Okay, let's talk about color contrast. This is one I see libraries unfortunately fail often, especially with images. Uh, so let's talk about this. Let me know in the chat. Can you read that? And there's usually a little bit of a lag in the chat, but just tell me. Kylie says not well, not easily, says Nathan. Daniel says not well. Yes, but not well. So that's generally the consensus, right? It's not great. So when we talk about color contrast, we're talking about the contrast of the text to the background. This obviously is not a great example. How about this one? Nathan says worse. Oh, worse, says Lasella. If I said that right. That's worse! Exclamation point, says Brenda. Oh, definitely worse, right? This is terrible. And again, I'm making an assumption here. Maybe I shouldn't, but that most people who are coming today do not have a visual disability that affects what they see on a screen in any major way. I mean, I wear bifocals, but I don't count that. So this is a real problem because it happens not only with actual text, it happens in images all the time. If I went and look, just to give you a speculative number, I would say that if I went and looked at your website, I bet I could find an image somewhere that has this problem. I have seen, for example, royal blue text on black backgrounds in an image, or purple text on light purple text on a black image that maybe you think is fine. Turns out, by WCAG standards, it's not. So what you can see and what actually meets the standards is not the same thing. So that light kind of teal that we started out with, this what you're looking at here is the actual evaluation of that text on that background. This is WebAIM's color contrast checker. And you can see what I did is I took the hexadecimal value of that greenish blue, whatever you want to call it, and with white text, all Fs. That's the hexadecimal value, easy to remember. And you can see the contrast ratio because this is what WCAG and all the automated checkers are looking for is only 1.24 to 1. That's terrible. You can see if you look down below that, normal text, it fails at every level. Large text, which gets more leniency, I'll show you that in just a second, also fails. So this is not good for anybody. And you all in the chat were helpful and said, this is not great, didn't like it. Nobody does. So it's important that contrast ratio be good, uh, and it has to meet certain ratio numbers. So what is that? So what you're looking at here over on the left is you see 21 point or 21 to 1. That is literally white on black or black on white. That is as high as contrast can go, is black and white, right? That's why often text is black on white paper. What's a 1 to 1 look like? You can't see it, but there's white text in that square over to the right, and that's 1 to 1. So if you're like, okay, well, Lord, does that mean that everything has to be in black and white and 21 to 1? No, that's not what that means. But I wanted to just illustrate what that would look like. So here's what you need to know is that, first of all, this does apply to the text on your images. Now, important thing to understand here, though, no checker in the world can automatically detect text that's part of an image and tell you if the contrast is enough. You do have to test it manually. Maybe that magic will happen someday. It hasn't yet, and it's not on the horizon. So your text and the images of text have to be at a minimum 4.5 to 1. If it's larger scale, and I'll show you what that means in a second also, or images are larger scale, you get a little more leniency here. It only has to be 3 to 1. So if you have a big image and you have text on the image, there's a little more wiggle room by 1.5 in that contrast ratio. So you might want to screenshot this, or you can wait for a link to the recording. But this is generally what WCAG means by large scale text. And you can see what that looks like in terms of regular text or bold text. So if you're wondering, well, how do I know which to use? This is generally going to be your rule of thumb. So the bigger it is, the more leniency that you're going to have because you get that 1 to 3 ratio. Regular body text, which is usually, hopefully, at least 16 points if you're using the points, is going to be that 4.5 to 1. And you can use, there's a whole lot of different tools that you can use to check color contrast. Maybe you already have your favorite that's not WebAIM. WebAIM is probably the most popular and the one I recommend. But I have also used plenty of others. They all do the job. It's not important which one you use as long as you are using one. Okay, so let's talk about PDFs. This is everybody's least favorite section because if you thought any of the rest of it was bad news, it gets far worse from here. Nobody is ever happy when I talk about PDFs. You can just ask Don. That PDFs is not a happy conversation, but we're going to have it. I think that it's important to realize before we even start down the PDF road is that this is an issue for everybody, not just libraries. PDFs or portable document format has been part of workflows in every kind of business and organization. It's seemingly forever, right? The format's been around for more than a couple of decades. And it's firmly embedded in our workflows, I think. And even for us here at Open, this has been a struggle because we have had to completely rethink how we do some things. And I'm happy to say that we've pretty much completed that process, but we have been working on it for easily over a year. But understand that you are not alone in this. PDFs you would think are accessible, they're not. They are inherently inaccessible. As soon as you create one, you've now created something inaccessible. Ta-da! That nobody wants to hear that because they are so firmly entrenched in our workflows everywhere. Native HTML pages or web pages are always going to be better than a PDF. Always, always, always. Isn't that terrible? You didn't want to hear that. But that's true. And that is because HTML is a semantic coding language. It is structured. For those of you who've had any of it in the past, you get that. Like, oh, yeah, it's definitely structured. Even when I was showing you how to structure a table or how to use headers, that's structure. And that's what assistive technology is looking at, remember, is the structure and the code behind the curtain. And so native HTML web pages are always going to be better. There's just no getting away from that. So what your options with PDFs are, there's really only two. The first one, which is the route, frankly, that we at Open have gone with and that we have been recommending to all our client libraries, and it's not just us, as you'll see in just a minute, is to stop using PDFs and get that content out of PDFs. Its time has come. Again, not the happiest part of today's session. That's probably making you want to go drink on your own at this point. The second option is to remediate. And that sounds like, oh, we will just fix up all our PDFs. Probably not. Remediation is not for the faint of heart, short of time, and it does require a paid subscription to at least Adobe Acrobat Pro and learning how to use a screen reader. It's not a fun process for anybody, and this is why it's something we don't recommend anymore. It's time to stop using PDFs. I was in a webinar for I think it was actually about getting buy-in for different kinds of processes for accessibility in an organization. And so it was a whole bunch of accessibility professionals in there. And I don't know how we got to talking about PDFs, except there's such a huge topic with accessibility. And I don't know who said this. I would totally credit her. I don't know where she was from, but I will always remember this, that she said, I just tell my colleagues to yeet them all into the sun. I thought that is the best advice I've heard in a long time, and it's said very succinctly. And so I am passing this on to you as probably advice you don't want to hear, but I'm telling you, yeet them all into the sun. Remediating PDFs is a significant time commitment. It's not minor, even to do one, because the original source document has to be remediated. So let's say you created it in Word. Then you have to export it in a special way, and then you have to remediate it again in Adobe Acrobat Pro, and then you have to test it in a screen reader. I don't know that libraries have documents that require or they're willing to devote that much time to an individual document. So it's time to change how we do things. So I share this, a pro tip. The root cause of your PDF overload is the process that keeps creating them. Change your workflow and you can stop the PDF pileup before it starts. That sounds really good, right? Like, okay, yeah, sure, Laura, we'll stop using PDFs, but what about all the PDFs we already have? This is harder. This is definitely harder. So let's go here and talk about common questions I get about PDFs. Because, of course, as soon as I say what this person said, hey, eat them all into the sun, stop making more of them, put all that content into regular web pages, get it out of PDFs, people start thinking, well, could I do this? Could I do that? These are the most common ones that I get. Can I use a JPEG or some kind of image format instead? Can I have just one? Will they care if I have just one? Can I have a PDF if the text is also somewhere else on the page? What if I use an MS Word document that people can download instead? Guess what the answer is to all of these? It is, in fact, no, and I'll talk about why. First of all, if you use a JPEG or any kind of image format, you've now taken a JPEG, which maybe some of it might have been natively accessible, and now it's absolutely not accessible at all. When you lock something up into an image format like JPEG or PNG or GIF, that text disappears for all practical purposes. It becomes part of the image. So it's not a good solution or any solution. Can I have just one? No. Legally, if you have content on your website, it has to be accessible. Can I have a PDF if the text is also somewhere else? No, there's no separate but equal. If you have content on your website, it has to be accessible. What if I use an MS Word document instead? Well, not a great idea. First of all, that makes an assumption that everybody can access it at all because many people don't have Microsoft Word. There's no universal reader really for Microsoft Word or Microsoft products like there is for Adobe Acrobat, unfortunately. And also, that still means that the Microsoft Word document would have to be remediated. So none of these are unfortunately solutions for the problem. Okay, some final notes, and then I know you're probably possibly bursting with questions. First of all, if you want to do an automated check on your own library's website and you've not done one before, I typically recommend Wave from webaim.org. Webaim is probably the largest and the oldest and most respected accessibility organization on the internet. Which is why I also recommend their contrast checker. But there are lots of tools again that do that. But this one is particularly visual and does a pretty good job of explaining some of the problems. However, important things to note is that automated checkers cannot check all accessibility errors. They just can't. When I do professional audits, and I'm not allowed to do them for libraries in Ohio because I work for Oakland, but when I do them for places um, uh, outside of Ohio, I use at least two different checkers along with a whole lot of manual checks where you need some expertise to dig under the hood and get all of it. So while I'm telling you to use an automated checker to get started, understand that they don't catch everything, even if you run two of them, even if you run three of them. And you should run at least two because typically you'll end up with different errors, which is always kind of mind-boggling to me, but they use different engines. And so if you use two different checkers, you'll probably get some similarities where they will both catch the same thing, and then some things that the other didn't catch. So another reason to use more than one, but again, can't be the only way. There's a lot of manual checking that goes into truly making something accessible. Another thing that I have been asked about in the past is, well, how do I balance web accessibility with what I want to put on my website? And my answer to that is you don't, because web accessibility is not a balancing act. It's a legal requirement, and we are libraries that serve the public. So it's not a choice that you get to make. There's no balancing act here. Your stuff has to be accessible. And so maybe that's a different way to frame it. It's not as pleasant as, hey, can we balance this against something else? But it is a core responsibility. Our job is to provide information to people, and we can't do that if they can't access the information. So it is not a balancing act. One last thing, because we've kind of talked about screen readers a little bit here and there throughout this entire presentation. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity, if you would like, to try one out on your own. The biggest, usually, at least in the US, the biggest screen reader is JAWS. And if some of you have that installed, like to machine in your library, absolutely go give it a spin and see what it's like to navigate the web. In fact, a good idea is to take a blindfold, put it on, and go. And it'll probably be overwhelming very quickly. But if you don't have JAWS, because JAWS is a very expensive product, you probably, many of you already know that, there is an open source project called NVDA, which stands for Non-Visual Desktop Access, and it is free to download. It is Windows only. Sorry, Mac and Linux folks. But you can install it, and it does take time to get familiar with it. I'm constantly checking my cheat sheets when I do because I just don't use it constantly enough to remember the shortcuts. Um, One thing that freaks people out when they start using a screen reader is that typically they may not scroll while the reader is reading. Because remember, what a screen reader does is it's looking at the code behind the page. It's not looking at the page. So while your eyes are scrolling the page, screen reader isn't doing that. It's looking at what's behind that. So the page often will not move. In other words, while you're using a screen reader. So that takes a little getting used to, which is another reason why blindfolding yourself just to try it might make it a little easier for you to focus because then you realize there's not a disconnect between what the screen reader quote unquote sees and what you're seeing. There's a great getting started guide also from WebAbe down there, and that URL will also be available through the QR code. And now I wanted to be sure to leave a ton of time for questions. I really appreciate you letting me get through all of that without asking questions. But it is question time. So I'm happy to take whatever you've got. So please go ahead and put those into the chat. And I can see those are already starting to pile up. So hang on just a second. I'm going to pop my chat open. Okay, and Zoe says, I have a question about the PDFs on the website. Would it be acceptable to have the content available as HTML? And no. So, and sorry, I answered the question too fast. I have a question about the PDFs on the website. Would it be acceptable to have the content available as HTML and a downloadable PDF? An example may be a library policy handbook or job posting. No. So that was one of the things that I mentioned a few slides ago. Let me actually go back to that. So we can just, if you want to screenshot this. Da-da-da. Maybe it was too far back. Here we go. There we go. Can I use a PDF if the text is somewhere else on the page also? So that is a no. I'm sorry. If you have any content on your website, it has to be accessible. There's no getting around that. I got another question about alt text. Do you need to type in any and all wording in an image? Example, program flyer image has wording and when click takes you to calendar description. So I don't really have time to talk about long descriptions, which are not quite the same as alt text, but I'll do what I can. If you are using, first of all, using a flyer as an image is a bad idea for this alone. So whenever I see these, in fact, when I do evaluations both for Ohio libraries and for for Open WebKit libraries, this is one of the things I look for is when people have posted flyers as images, and because this is a real problem because there is a lot of text on these things, and describing that, you can't do it within the confines of basically 125 characters. So this is why I generally tell libraries don't do this to begin with. You'll save yourself a lot of headaches. If you do have to do something like this, if there's absolutely no way to avoid it, then you need something called a long description. And if that's something you actually need, I encourage you to reach out to me individually. And if you're from a WebKit library in an accessibility office hour, to talk about that. But that's a good question. Um, Okay, more questions. What if the idea is to provide a printable form for people who prefer a paper version? It still has to be accessible. Still has to be accessible. Um, Unfortunately, that's not great. But an online form that can be filled out online that is not a PDF is always going to be more accessible and generally can still mostly be printed out, depending on what it is. Another question, as you have completed audits for libraries outside of Ohio, can you recommend a library example you found had great accessibility? I'm sorry, Travis, I don't mean to laugh. I get this question a lot, and there's not a great answer for this because there's no site anywhere that's perfectly accessible, including Open's. Because the problem with websites, of course, is that they are at least hopefully dynamic. They change all the time. Even if I caught one, which has never happened, in the midst of being perfectly accessible, 5 minutes later, somebody could come in and change it. Plus, what they have on their website, it's apples to oranges. It may not be arranged or coded in the way that your site is. So this is why it has to be done on a case by case basis. So that actually is a really good question. Can you, oh, sorry, the QR code, when I backed up, someone was asking about, I left the QR code. So my apologies. Let me remedy that right now. There we go. Sorry about that. Thank you for reminding me to go back that way. Um, Caitlin asked, just to clarify, the only solution for PDFs on a website is to make them HTML content on a web page. It's either that or learn how to remediate. And if you're interested in that, I can recommend some beginner courses, which may get you started. They are generally not enough to do everything. This is why this person in this webinar told her colleagues to eat them all into the sun, because the amount of time that it takes to learn to remediate a PDF is often longer than it would take to just take that content and make it into a web page. Anna asks, I have a newsletter template that uses images as headers, and I will write header in the alt text. No. Is it acceptable? No. So if you are using images as header, then that alt text needs to say whatever is in the header. So it doesn't necessarily have to be marked up as a header. So like if it's an image, it doesn't necessarily have to be like an H1 and H2 and H3. But whatever is on that header, so let's say the header is bestseller list, then that's what should be in the alt text. That you don't actually say it's a header, because the only thing the screen reader or other assistive technology is going to look at is what does the person get in lieu of being able to see the thing. They're not going to necessarily, because it's an image, generally it's not going to be a landmark in the same way that like a header would be. Um, Okay, more questions coming in. My library also uses a font that makes the sentence appear all caps in our brand kit. Would a font that appears all caps be more accessible for screen readers, or the same as actually using if it's all caps, it's all caps. I'm not sure there's any difference. If it's part of your brand kit, this might be the time to start fighting that battle. Um, Now, if it's just part of, I'll back that up a little bit, because if it's, let's say it's part of your logo. Like I've seen some libraries, maybe in Ohio, it could be anywhere, where they have like the logo for the website, and then underneath in all caps, they might say serving blank county. If it's part of your logo, logos are kind of like get out of jail free card when it comes to accessibility. There's a lot of things that don't necessarily apply if it's actually part of a logo image. But if it is not part of a logo image, then you have different issues, and you probably need to find something else to replace that with. Um, Caitlin asked, does Oakland still provide website audits? We do, but you have to understand that these are audits of the website, not just accessibility. We only provide very basic automated checks of the homepage. We do not do full in-depth. I have to tell you that it generally, when I do an audit for libraries outside of Ohio, it takes me 10 to 20 hours. These are not things that we can provide here at Oakland. I'm sorry. And I had a library tell me that they were quoted $4,000 to $5,000 for someone to do theirs. For the site they already had. So it's not a small process. If you're interested though in getting a website audit where we're just going to do an automated quick check of the homepage and we're going to look at other things about the website, there's actually 7 other categories of things that we look at. Happily, we will do that. We do up to 4 different libraries a month, and right now I don't have any for January, so I'd be happy to do that. Um, Andy says, I believe if it uses CSS to uppercase, you're fine because the code behind is actually written correctly. Not exactly, because if someone is, in theory, that sounds good. The problem is that if someone has low vision, all of those problems with all caps still apply. In that it's still going to have, because that's someone who probably is not using assistive technology, or maybe they're just using a magnifying function in their browser. And so they're still going to have those same problems with uppercase. So it sounds good. You'd think it would be good, but unfortunately, it doesn't cover every eventuality. Brenda asks, how can you check the contrast of text and images? Are you talking about images that you're creating yourself? Well, it could be any image. What I would recommend is using The WebAIM color contrast checker, that URL is something you can get either from the recording or you can grab it from the QR code there. As far as figuring out the hexadecimal value of a color, which is what these things typically want, and that's what was in the demo that I did early on when we talked about color contrast, is generally I recommend a browser add-on. It's called, and I this it's called ColorZilla. I don't have a URL for this. I just put the name into the chat. So what it does, I love it. I use it multiple times a day because what it does is it allows you to capture the color out of anything, whether it's text or text in an image or an image or a photo, whatever. It has a little eyedropper. And so you just use the eyedropper and then it will magnify the area you're on so you can get the precise pixel you want and it will grab the hexadecimal code from that. Absolutely love this. That if you ask me what one browser extension I would take to my web development desert island, it would be ColorZilla. Oh, and Kylie, thank you. She just pulled, looks like the link for that browser extension. I know it's good for Chrome. I think it also works in Firefox. I'm not sure about other browsers, but I'm sure it will tell you. So thank you. I should know library folks are like, we'll go find that. Um, Nathan says, we have a flyer carousel on our website's homepage. Is there a better accessible option to fix it or should this be removed entirely? Ooh, soapbox or a carousel I've been up for on for another a decade. There's so many problems with carousels. We don't build them anymore. First of all, they're more dated elements. So if you need more ammunition to talk to your administrators, that's the first thing you can start with. If you want is like, okay, these have fallen out of fashion, if nothing else. So that's an easy win to modernize your website right there. Beyond that, making those things accessible is not simple. And it's different from case to case and how the script is written behind it and what it's displaying and what it's not displaying and whether it has the proper kinds of controls. We don't build them anymore. And I have been telling people for a long time, even before web accessibility became a hot topic, to get these off. Because from a usability perspective, they're terrible. They're absolutely terrible. And if you think of them purely from a return on investment perspective, which is hopefully how most things would be looked at outside of accessibility, is like, are we getting the value of this real estate out of it? The answer is no. The most recent study I saw said that on average, about 1% of people actually click on a carousel image. 1%. And those that do only click on the first one. They don't sit around and look at the others. Um, so in other words, statistically, it's not a great value for that prime real estate that those things take up. So that's a long answer to what seemed like a simple question, Nathan, but my recommendation would be is it's time for it to go also. Okay, and I saw that there was, I think there was a question I missed or just came in. Sorry. Things scroll. Our library uses BiblioCommons for its website, catalog, and app. Do you have any experience with their products? So not really, because websites we build here at Open, and we don't really work, at least I don't work with ILSs directly other than to make searches possible from the website to the catalog, and I definitely don't have use with the app. So, but what you're talking about there is a third person or a third party, I should say, vendor. So outside of your stuff, and certainly outside of our stuff, BiblioCommons is its own thing, right? So what I would suggest is you talk to someone at BiblioCommons and ask them either for, here's more acronyms. We love those in library land, also in tech and accessibility land, or I'm putting this in the chat. Hang on a second. An ACR. Ask them for one of these. Those are things that tell you exactly how accessible each product is and what they're working on if things are not accessible. They're not exactly the same thing, but they're roughly equivalent, and a company should have one of those. And folks, if you're even if you're not using BiblioCommons, you can apply this to any vendor that you're working with for these kinds of products, or just about any product, really. So Anna asks, so maybe a dumb question, but it seems like if I put a promotional poster on the website, it would be fine as an image with descriptive text, but if I post the same poster as a PDF, it would not be allowed. Um, that's Not a dumb question. It does simplify it a little bit, though. So if you put a promotional poster on the website as an image, you still would have to have appropriate long description for it, which again, I can't really go into detail here today. If you want to reach out to me individually another time, I can try to walk you through what that is. But this is why I don't recommend using this approach. I know it's very common for like a PR department to come up with something and then you use it everywhere, but that's not really practical for accessibility purposes. So what I would suggest instead is, and of course the PDF, no, you don't want the PDF, but instead of putting up a whole promotional flyer or poster, is that maybe grab a piece of it as an image and then link it to a page where the information is, unless you want to get into writing long descriptions, which is not horrible. I don't want to make it out like it's remediating a PDF, which like is the ultimate I don't want to do on my list. It's not, but it would require you to do a little more work. Andy says BiblioCommons does have a VPAT. They use level access for their outside evaluation. We ask all vendors for their VPAT. We use the VPAT framework for evaluating our web presence. We have found most vendors do have a VPAT even if it's dated. Good. So that's a good practice to get into. I know that here at Oakland that this is something Christine Morris, our digital resources manager, does. Whenever the Libraries Connect Ohio consortium, which buys all the databases, they start looking at databases and resources to buy. They ask for VPATs or ACRs because they want to know just what they're getting. And remember, if there is a problem with it, that's going to be on, and somebody complains about it, it's going to be on that vendor to fix it. But by you asking for a VPAT or an ACR, what you're doing is you're letting that vendor know, hey, we care about accessibility, so you'd better care about accessibility. And the more people that ask, the better. Because sometimes vendors don't do anything, as we all know, until lots of people complain about it. And even then, sometimes not. So the more people who ask, always going to be better. So I'm very glad, Andy, that your library's already on the path to doing that. Any other questions? And even if there's not, I always like to ask people a question before they leave. So if you're like, oh, there's no more questions, I'm out of here. Before you go, I'm going to ask you to put one more thing into the chat, please, even if you haven't already participated. Maybe especially if you haven't already participated. And that is, what thing stuck out to you today? What was your aha moment? What was the one thing that you went, oh, that made you realize that you have to do this or that, or not do this or that, or what it might be like to use a screen reader. There's all kinds of things. We covered a lot of ground today. So I'm going to ask you, let me know what your aha moment was today. What was your big takeaway, even? And hopefully people are typing. And of course, if you still have questions, I'm happy to take those also. Um, Lacella, if I said that right, PDFs. The video reader example was a big aha moment, says Travis. Don't use PDF, says John. Um, Road Movie 7 says how much work there will be due to how much we utilize PDFs and carousels. Yep, you've got some remediation work ahead of you. No PDF, says Andrea. Cheryl says UCSS versus tables. Colorzilla, says Beth, my favorite. Oakland helping with evaluations. Suzanne says we use a lot of PDFs. I'm sorry about the PDFs, folks. Please don't kill the messenger. It is what it is. Daniel says the video reader example and PDFs. And by the way, for those of you who like the video reader example, whether you typed it or not, you can find all kinds of screen reader demos on YouTube. So you're like, just start not Googling, but searching YouTube. Might as well be Googling. You can find all kinds of things. Problems with overlay widgets, says Brenda. PDF, says Teresa. PDF, yeah, PDFs hit hard for a lot of people. Robin says most of this makes perfect sense to me, but some of it feels like it's forcing us to take away information that helps a lot of our patrons just because it isn't helpful to everyone. It sounds like there's no justification to offer any format that would preserve paper printable layout. For example, if we offer lots of ways to our patron to participate in summer reading, and one of them to accommodate a lot of patrons' preferences is a paper tracking form, we shouldn't try to make that easier for some patrons by putting up a printable PDF for them to download. You can, it just has to be accessible. The thing is, I had this conversation somewhat similar to this a while ago. It's like, well, I can't put up my board policies, so I'm going to take them all down. Um, you can just do it a different way. Maybe make it, it can still be an online form that can still be printed out. the choice shouldn't be to take things away. It should always be to offer things different in a different way. Adele said, let's see. Adele says this is something to take seriously. I appreciate you explaining it in detail. You're very welcome. Nathan said no PDFs was a surprise, but a lot of work to do even at the small level of headers and alt text. Yeah, and remember, my it was the second slide, right? The iceberg. This is the tip of the iceberg. Even if you do all these things, it will not be enough to make your site completely accessible. We can't cover what that would look like even in a day. It's just massive. But these are really good places to start since libraries typically control their content. Um, Lemon asks, what about PDFs on intranet website? This is a tough one. This is a really tough one because I am not a lawyer. So my understanding, which may not be correct, and I encourage you to reach out to your legal counsel, is that technically that wouldn't be great. Could you let me back that up a little bit. So one question I've gotten in the past, although I didn't get it today, is there some kind of mechanism at the Department of Justice where someone's going to start looking at our sites and filing complaints? The answer basically is no. Okay, just like with the ADA, unless somebody complains you don't have a ramp, the ADA or the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division isn't coming out to look at your library, right? Although that's something that would typically these days be caught in like a building inspection. Does that mean that you should try to get away with it? Of course not. Whether or not you have to do it for your internal site, you may not have anybody with disabilities where they would be affected by that right now, but you should be starting to think about just removing PDFs from your workflow entirely whenever possible. Um, and Andy says, our view as our staff also have disabilities, so we focus on the public first and the staff just based off the volume of traffic and people impacted. And maybe that's the way you go, and maybe that's kind of where I was leading with my talking about how there's no, big brother agency that's coming specifically to look at your problem unless somebody complains. And a question that I have gotten in the past, although again I didn't get it today, but I'll talk about it, is if somebody has a problem with our website, what happens? Well, ideally, this is the way it's supposed to work, folks. It's not how it always works, as I'll share in a minute. Is that they contact you, the library, and say, "Hey, I can't get to this thing X because of Y," and then you get it fixed, whether it's yours or it's your vendor's problem or your web person's problem, wherever that lives. However, part of the reason that I started getting so many calls earlier this year from libraries outside of Ohio is that people were not going to the libraries. They were actually just filing complaints straight with the DOJ, the Civil Rights Division, which is not ideal. Does that mean that you're going to jail? No, but it does mean that you're now going to have the DOJ over your shoulder, making sure that those things get fixed. Um, let's see. And Travis asked about the recording. Then the link to the recording will go out probably, well, it's kind of late today. So by the time it processes and everything, probably early tomorrow, as long as you registered for this, which obviously if you're here, you did, then you'll get a link to the recording. And yes, Don says we'll post the recording to our YouTube channel. Jody says, how many people do you allow to update library pages? So I'm not sure what that question means. Are you talking about like open web kits? Okay, then maybe that was directed to the group at large. I'm not sure. Maybe you can clarify that. Oh, and Don points out that yes, we have to do accessibility remediation. So when you post something to YouTube, it's got to have captions and a transcript, and they have to be accurate. Didn't cover that today. Remember, tip of the iceberg. But yes, before we can post this, we have to do that. Um, so it looks like, Jody, you might be getting some responses also in the chat. Okay, Jody will call me specifically. Um, okay, folks, that's all that I have. Um, Brenda asked, will there be a follow-up class with further info like captions, etc.? Honestly, Brenda, I don't know. That's not something we've looked at this point. Again, web accessibility is absolutely massive. I have taken probably more than 200 hours of coursework at this point, working towards, I've achieved one certification, working towards the second. And so it's a lot. So I'm not sure if we're going to do that. It's a lot. Maybe. How about I'll give a qualified maybe, but it's a good question. So I want to thank everybody for coming today. Make sure to make use of the QR code, and the recording will be forthcoming. Thanks for spending some time with us this afternoon, learning about the basics of web accessibility.